We're going to be talking about my experience of breaking up with birth control and what that did for me, and how I've kind of experienced life and health and vibrancy after getting off of it, and some things that I didn't realize at the time it was impacting for me. I just kind of chalked it up as like my normal. And I think some of you can probably relate to that, where you're like, I felt fine while I was on birth control. But then when you get off of it, you're like, oh yeah, like that makes sense now. So I got off of birth control in 2019 and I ended up with the IUD. And the reason I came to this decision was because I was starting to dive into what health actually is and what is normal and how to support like my athletic body and the activity that I was doing. And it was such a something that I've always been very natural minded, very holistic minded. And so at that time I was like, why am I still on this? Like, why am I still doing this to myself? When the reason I got on birth control was because of a previous relationship where they were telling me that things would be feeling better for them if they were on that compared to the way that we had been doing things. So it's not like I went into birth control because I was pressured to by doctors. It was because of a pressure of a person, in a relationship at that time. So I really didn't want to do it, and I first got on oral contraceptives and I didn't like how I felt on them. I immediately noticed how it made me feel different and I didn't like that. And I wasn't as consistent with it either. So I got off of that for a little while, and then the conversations kept coming up of like, it would feel better if you got on birth control, that type of stuff. So, okay, what could I do that is like minimal hormones? Because I knew, again, very natural minded, like I just didn't want the synthetic stuff. So I ended up with the Mirena IUD, and at that point in time, I felt like all things were fine. I wasn't having periods at that time, and it was like, yay, like, don't have to worry about periods. And again, didn't really have a huge understanding of the health benefits of women having consistent cycles and why they're so important. At that time, that's what everybody talked about, and that's an incentive for people to get on birth control. It's like, you don't have periods, and so woo us. But yeah, we're missing out on a lot. So that was a good decision at that time for myself, and I think I had the Mirena IUD for about 5 years, and then I came to this point in 2019 where I was like, she gone, bye. I went to my gyno, told them, why I wanted it out, and they were concerned. How are you going to prevent pregnancy now? If anybody can relate to this experience, yeah. So I got that question, and then also when I mentioned the reason why I didn't want to have it anymore, I got back with, well, here is some progesterone. Here's a progesterone pill that I can prescribe you to kickstart your period to kind of make this happen faster for you. And I was like, you're still missing the point. I want to have my body get back to its normal, get back to its homeostasis on its own, whatever time it needs. I'm not in any rush here. Like, I'm literally just trying to discover what my periods will be like since I've been on something suppressed for 5 years. I want to give my body the time to come back to its place. And so, needless to say, I didn't pick up that prescription. So, when I got off birth control, and there was like a time period, I think I didn't get my period until maybe 6 or 5 to 8 months after I got off of it. Oh, wait, no. It was 6 months later. And at that time, I was like, yeah, I saw people sharing about their birth control experience, and I was like, yeah, none of that really relates. Like, I think things were fine. It honestly wasn't until like a year later, or when my body started to get back into its homeostasis again, where I noticed the patterns that I was falling into when I was on some synthetic birth control, when I was on something to suppress my feminine physiology, when I was on something that breaks up the communication from my brain to my gut to my ovaries. I noticed that the way I showed up in life was very go, go, go. I'm a go-getter. I'm going to go after and do whatever I want. Like, nobody can stop me. I'm unstoppable. That type of very, like, hard, fast, like, constant doer energy. I was also in bodybuilding. I also was working out maybe twice a day. I was still in that same relationship, but it was kind of very toxic. And then I was also trying to figure out a new relationship. It was all sorts of stuff. And I didn't realize that, number one, the way that I was operating in my life when I was on birth control is completely different to when I started having cycles again. And not that they were even regular cycles, like just like a year later, I was having like almost monthly cycles, but it was still trying to figure its place out. But it was noticeable then of how I was operating when I was on birth control. Um, something else that I noticed was that I just kind of chalked myself up to be like not sexual. Like that was an identity that I gave myself because of who I was on birth control. So if you're on birth control and you're like, I'm just, I'm not super like, my libido is really low, like I'm not super sexual, which is mind blowing because the reason I was on it was to enhance the sexual experience, and it was only for the other person because it wasn't actually benefiting me because I was having a lack of a sexual drive. So if you're on birth control and you're thinking that like, something's wrong with me, there is, because birth control is literally blocking your ability to ovulate. And ovulation, when you actually have it, is when you typically have your highest sex drive. So we're missing out on that. So that was something else I noticed. And I now have been an integrative health coach I've been operating my own coaching practice for 5 years now. So I have noticed this too with women that I work with now for health issues, for menstrual cycle related issues, for gut health issues, for hormone related issues, besides sex hormones. We're really deep diving into root causes, and we're really diving into why the body is experiencing what it is and how we can support it to unravel the layers to feel better. And this is not just merely found in like a thyroid supplement. This is not merely found in even returning cycles back. Like, how are we ovulating? Are we ovulating well? Like, how are we supporting our bodies? What chemicals are we exposed to? Do we have any water damage in the homes? There is so much to dive into the layers of why your body is speaking the way that it is. But I digress. The things that I notice with my clients who were on birth control and then through their time with me, they get off of birth control, is they then can start to slow down as well. I will notice them shift into this like, I can do it all, I'll book my schedule up all the time, I'll keep myself busy. And then when they get off of birth control, they start to have more slowness. And at first it bothers them. They're like, why am I feeling this way? Like I used to be blah, blah, blah. And then they start feeling bad about how they're feeling because they used to be so like drive, 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 go, go, go. But when you get off of birth control, you will notice that you start to shift to slowing down a little bit more. You have more ebb and flow. You're not always go, 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 drive, drive, drive. Your energy is not the same every day. You get tired at times. You are super energetic at times. So it's so interesting to also see this play out in the dynamics of masculine energy to feminine energy, and how I literally will see my clients swing on the pendulum from high masculine energy to all the way into like this like feminine place. And I was the same exact way. I was very masculine, go, 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 go. And then I shifted literally all the way to like total slowness. Like, I need to slow down. I need to rest. I'm going to give myself grace. I'm going to lean into my softness. And I had to go all the way for the other side because of how far I was into my masculine. Had to swing all the way over to the softness and to the feminine. And it hasn't been. My journey began in 2019 getting off of birth control, but I didn't get to like true health and finding like the homeostasis where my thyroid was optimally functioning, where I was having consistent ovulatory cycles, where I was having no menstrual symptoms. And when I would have some, the very slightest would be like the teeniest, tiniest little cramp. Like, I totally reversed my health within 3 years. So yes, it does take time, but I noticed that I literally shifted from one all the way to the other. And then just now within the last year of my journey, have I been able to move more into the middle, because we are both masculine and feminine. That I find this is a very common pattern for a lot of women when they are on birth control to getting off of birth control. And then once their body is getting homeostasis, guess what? Now we can balance between the two. So we can ebb and flow over here to masculine, and we can go in over here to our softness. We're not like tied to one side or the other. We're having the flow. And that is exactly what the feminine is. Like, we aren't just the softness, we aren't just like the slowness and the still, like we're all of it. Like, we're all of it. And so we don't get to feel bad about being driven and motivated and action takers. And we also don't get to feel bad if we feel a little bit more tired and we want to like slow down a little bit. We want to turn inwards a little bit more. We don't want to go out and socialize. We maybe just want to like cuddle up and be close with our partner, and like that's it. Or maybe we want to go off and be by ourselves. We're just like, I'm going to go for a walk and like I just want to be by myself. Like, we don't get to feel bad about either way because we get to experience it all. And I think that is what is so beautiful when you step out of what birth control does, where it suppresses the actual feminine. You never get to release the progesterone hormone from ovulation by being on birth control. So you miss out on what the feminine can feel like. You miss out on the rest that we need for all this action that we're taking, which is why so many women burn out when they're on long-term birth control. It's because they don't have any more energy to pull from because they're just constant go, go, go. And at that point, the body's going to force you to slow down. And so we see women on birth control who start to develop IBS. We see women on birth control who start to develop these anxious minds. We see this translate then into they're still on it. They're on anti-anxiety meds, and now they're on antidepressants, and now they're on Accutane because the body is starting to yell really fucking loud. And nobody is really looking back at birth control as being the big player in this, because what's underneath it isn't being addressed. When people are going in there for going to their doctors for menstrual related issues, for skin or acne related issues, nobody's diving deeper into why this is presenting in the first place. It's not that you're deficient in synthetic hormones. And I think this is a big conversation we need to talk about, is that yes, medicine has its place, but like, why are we not being more like preventative with it? Why are we not asking more questions, like seeing the body as whole, as interconnected, as everything communicates to one another? So if something is off, the rest will then be off too. So this makes total sense when you start to do the work that I'm doing, and you start to see this in the clients that I work with, is you do see all this list of symptoms that people come to you with, and it connects and it all makes sense. And not saying that birth control is a root cause, because it's not. Something else was dysfunctional underneath it. Something else was off before it. And now that needs to address. And the longer that you're on birth control, the longer that root cause or causes, because it's likely not even just one thing, that has just been manifesting, and it's manifesting in all these different ways. So this has been the experience that I've had myself, and this is what I kind of see unfolding for my clients. So I wanted to kind of share this if anybody else is on this journey of post-birth control, which I'm glad is being a very loud conversation now, but just seeing it through the lens of like the feminine and the masculine is really, really, really interesting, because you'll often find too that women on birth control, they're also in the phase where they are constantly dieting. They're constantly trying to control their bodies. They're constantly trying to manipulate, make their body look a certain way. And this is all driven by like trying to control the body, because there's a subconscious way that they feel like they don't have control. And when you are on birth control and you get off of it, you start to see that you do need food more often. You do need to feed yourself. You do need to take care of yourself. You do need to mother yourself. And that is nurturing yourself. And that's what the feminine is. We are nurturers. But you don't see that when you're on birth control. And you can kind of get away with it for a little bit of time when you're on birth control and you have this suppression going on. But it will come back to bite you in the ass. And some women can have a pretty hard time getting off birth control and starting to tune into their body of what they are experiencing, because for so long they've gaslit themselves, or they've just suppressed everything and they haven't had to feel what the body is feeling. And this can be pretty hard for people. So when you hear somebody say like, just listen to your body, if you've never had to listen to it, if you've been not listening to it because mind over matter and you're an athlete like myself, where we really learn to push through the pain because pain is weakness leaving the body, like that can work for you for a period of time. And there's going to be a point in time where you have to like unlearn the shit that you learned and realize that what worked for you before, what worked for you 15, 20 years ago isn't going to work for you now. We are physiologically changing every 7 years. So if you were still doing the same thing and wondering why things aren't changing for you, that's why. You're not doing something different. You're not trying something different. You're not understanding that you are in a different season of life. You are a completely different person at this point in time. what worked for you before is not going to work for you now. And women on birth control can get away with that type of drive for so long until they get off of it and they realize continuing to try to drive and push and take action and do doesn't work anymore. You're not in the same position. You're not in the same state. What you did and what you could get away with maybe while you're on birth control isn't what you can do now. And now you're going to have to start listening to your body. Now you're going to have to start being in tune with, like, what does it need? What is it asking for? Because if you've just always suppressed it and pushed through it, you're not going to know what that is. You're not going to know what listen to your body is. And it's going to sound really crazy. You're going to be like, how do I even begin to listen to my body? How do I even know what that is? So in light of this conversation, I would like to venture to you, if you are on this journey of being post-birth control, or maybe you're even a couple years after post-birth control and you're still kind of navigating through this space of this new person that you are honestly structurally different at this point in time. Your minerals, like even the way that your body has laid out patterns of minerals, are completely different at this point in time. That you might be sitting with this conversation of, how do I listen to my body when I completely disconnected by birth control, my brain to my ovaries, my brain to other parts of my body? Like if I have literally disrupted that communication to make ovulation not happen, you're going to have to use a muscle. You're going to have to use your muscle. You're going to have to do repetitive work to try to build that connection back up. And this could be something as easy, something as simple as me sitting in this chair right now, having this conversation, and noticing my foot touching the desk and what that desk feels like. Noticing the temperature that the desk is to my foot. Noticing how my leg feels on top of my other leg as my leg is crossed. Noticing my seat bones, my pelvis sitting on the chair. Noticing this little like itch here that I have for my sports bra on a scab that I have where my clients or my cat scratch me. Noticing how my lips feel. They feel a little bit dry. I need to get some water. Like, I'm able to now notice I do need some water. Like, my tongue's a little dry. I'm getting the sensations that I need to drink some water. So when you see things across platforms and social media, and you're in this space too, you're in the like holistically healing your body, like navigating your body, understanding your body, becoming more empowered with your body, this might feel really hard, but it can be really simple, and I can teach you how to do this. The next thing that I want to mention is, by getting off of birth control, I started naturally tracking my cycle. And if you aren't familiar with naturally tracking your cycle or using fertility awareness method, it is going to change your life and change the way that you have ever felt about your body. And I'm saying this because this is my truth, is I have never felt more connected with my body than when I was starting to understand her symptoms, understanding her fertility signs, and even looking at my body temperature to help guide me through where I'm at in my cycle. So at any point in time you ask me where I'm at in my cycle, I know. I know when I'm approaching ovulation. I know when I'm going to start my period because I know when I ovulated and I track my temps, and I know how long my luteal phase should be. It should be 12 to 14 days. And I do not have to freak out about late periods because I'm able to find out why it's late. I'm able to understand that I ovulated late, and that is why my cycle is going to be a little bit longer. So tracking my cycle by looking at my fertility signs of cervical fluid, of the way that my cervix feels, of my pelvic position, of my body temperatures. I am so connected with my body. And if this is a struggle for you too, of like, I don't know how to listen to my body, I don't know how to understand it, dive into naturally tracking your cycle, because this will give you so much empowerment to like really feel totally in sync with your body. Like, I know it. I know my body. I know my symptoms. And when I see cervical fluid start to build up after day 4 of my cycle, it's so beautiful because I understand why it's there, and I understand what's going on with my hormones. I understand that estrogen is building up and that I can be fertile at this point in time, even though it's not ovulation. I know that sperm can survive 5 days and fertile quality cervical fluid. So diving into this is like, you have so much more appreciation for your cycle. I have so much more appreciation for my menstrual cycle, which is also my livelihood. My menstrual cycle influences how I experience and live through my life, what my needs are. By understanding my cycle, I know how to nourish my body. I know what my body needs around ovulation. I know what my body needs in early luteal phase. I know what my body might be calling for and needing in late luteal phase. I know that I might be more prone to low blood sugar in late luteal phase. I know that my estrogen is low in day 1 of my cycle, and I can feel the energy shifts by day 3 of my cycle. I'm able to know what I need to nourish my body through the menstrual phase and building up into follicular phase. I know what rest, I know what my body is craving, what my body's energy capacity is. I know how to then align my business to like place out through the week of like, okay, I'm in luteal phase. So my energetic expansion, my ability to expand beyond and create new ideas might be a little bit limited because I'm turning inwards. Just like when you understand your cycle, you understand how that is reflected in nature. And so if you ever are confused about your cycle, you're ever unsure, look to nature. It tells us. It tells us right there. What do you experience in fall season? You see leaves starting to fall. You see leaves turning to brown. You see the energy pulling from being in the leaves to inside and into the ground. You see animals retreating in winter. They're building up their like reservoirs, they're building up their nutrition, and they're going to go in and they're going to go under and they're going to go hibernate to make it through the winter. Energy is not outward and expansive, it's inward. And when you can understand your menstrual cycle and you're able to see it within the seasons, you just have such a connection to what your body is doing, what it's needing. And that relationship, when you understand your body, you understand what it needs, you feel what it's feeling, you give space, you give gratitude, you give grace to what you are feeling and experiencing, and not thinking that you have to be a robot and feel the same way every day, or that your partner should expect the same version of you every single day, when you are quite literally structurally different every single day because of your menstrual cycle. You have so much more understanding, and that just carries through everything in your life. That carries through everything in your life, and what you attract in your life and what you call in for your life, your boundaries that you have, saying no to people. Like, it's just so beautiful, and I wish more women could experience this, of how empowering it can be to be aligned and in tune with your inner seasons, with your cycle, and how that literally just manifests through everything in your life. You nourish yourself the way that you need to be nourished. You give yourself the nourishment of movement and rest, because nourishment isn't just related to food, it's also how we nourish our bodies. The self-care, etc., to support offloading estrogen in the second half of your cycle. There's so much that you can do to support your body by just being in tune with it and understanding it and naturally tracking your cycle. And I just think it's so beautiful to be able to see these signs and know what they mean and know what you need. And so I would love to see more of this information, more of cycle awareness, more of what menstrual health, feminine physiology, health topics to women would be, because I think this would change a lot of things for women if in schooling we learned about our menstrual cycle, not sex ed. I think this would be a hell of a lot different for women to feel more at home in her body than scared of it, than embarrassed of it, than feeling shameful about it, or experiencing negative, like bad cycles because they don't have any awareness to this. Imagine the ripple of health that we can spread across women, teens, and children in our lives when they can start to learn their cycle. And I love reflecting on how different cultures like Native Americans, they celebrate. They have a whole celebration and a ceremony for a woman starting her period. Imagine if we celebrated women's cycles in that way. And what's really interesting too is Native American women were looked to for guidance based off of where they were at in their cycle. So when they were menstruating, they actually went into tents and they were very spiritually connected, and they were looked at for guidance, for leading their tribe, for what they came to, what they discovered, what came to them, what they sat with while they were in their menstrual phases, because you quite literally are peeling back the layers of you and your womb, and between the physical and the spiritual. And so that is how women used to be viewed. We used to be viewed as a source of power. We used to be viewed as our menstrual cycles weren't a pain, weren't a bother, weren't shameful, weren't embarrassing. We were looked at as, this is awesome. Like, we were looked at as, this is great that you get to experience this, because we can add value to everybody by you being in tune with your cycle and us honoring that versus shaming you about it or having you plug up and shut up and just keep going because that's what we just have to do. No. So I hope this conversation has sparked some thoughts for you, has sparked some ideas for you, and maybe just resonated with you. And I would love to hear any feedback you have from this conversation or anything else you want to know about with things that I talked about.